Once upon a time, a war is brewing between two enemy nations, and things are about to get intense. One of these countries, Zhcted, is split into 7 regions, each ruled by a badass war maiden. These ladies are armed with some seriously powerful dragon-crafted weapons. A hot-looking bitch named Elen decides it's time to invade the neighboring country of Brune. In Brune, there's a young archer named Tigrevurmud, who's also an earl of the Alsace region. The story starts from one night before the big battle. Everyone in the Brunish camp was buzzing with excitement, thinking it was going to be an easy win. After all, they had 5 times more soldiers than the enemy, but things turned out completely different from what they expected. The opposing army was led by a brilliant war strategist named Elen, who pulled off a surprise attack at night when no one was ready for it. It turned into a brutal slaughter as Elen took down anyone who crossed her path, even defeating the Brunish prince. With their leader gone, the Brunish soldiers lost all confidence and started fleeing the battlefield. Tigre was still on the battlefield when the morning sun rose. He wandered through the carnage, desperately searching for any survivors to help, but all he found were the lifeless bodies of his comrades piled up everywhere. As he turned away from the grim scene, he suddenly spotted a rider charging at him with a sword. But Tigre quickly took him down with a precise shot to the head, killing him instantly. Unfortunately, the horse bolted, leaving Tigre without a way to escape the battlefield. As he continued walking, Tigre noticed a small group of soldiers making their way across the battlefield, led by none other than the silver-haired war maiden, Elen. Determined to end the bloodshed and stop the battle for good, Tigre decided to take out the enemy commander, which he knew would stall the war. Checking his quiver, he realized he only had 4 arrows left. He shot 2 of them at the horses in front of Elen, hoping to clear a path to her. But Elen spotted him from a distance and, with a swift move, galloped towards him, drawing her sword. Tigre quickly fired an arrow at her head, but she effortlessly sliced it in half with her sword. Stunned by her accuracy, he fired another arrow, but the outcome was the same. She cut it in 2 before closing in on him. Realizing there was no point in running, Tigre stood his ground as she approached, placing her sword against his neck and taking him captive. The next morning, Tigre wakes up in a surprisingly nice cell. Honestly, it's better than my current apartment, guys, which look like a dog shit. He's jolted awake by a female soldier who has a sword in his face. It's kind of kinky but mostly terrifying, like something my crazy dumbass bitches. She drags him to see Elen, who's casually sitting behind a table. She tells him he's now her prisoner of war, being the lord of a small region called Alsace. She offers to let him go if his region can cough up a hefty ransom. Tigre declines, explaining that Alsace is too poor to afford such a payment. Surprisingly, Elen isn't cruel at all and seems pretty chill. She admits that she's taken a liking to him because he tried to end the fight with as little bloodshed as possible by going straight for her. He knew that even if he managed to kill Elen, he wouldn't have enough arrows to deal with the rest of her guards, but he went for it anyway, valuing the end of the war over his own life. That's something Elen finds noble. However, there are rumors spreading at court that Tigre isn't as good an archer as people think. To prove them wrong, she takes him to the archery grounds. A few soldiers hand him a bow, but when he takes a shot, the arrow flies off in some random direction. He quickly realizes the bow is messed up and crooked, but instead of saying anything, he just tries again with the same bad result. The soldiers around him burst out laughing, mocking his archery skills. Suddenly, Tigre notices a hooded figure on top of a building pulling out a crossbow and aiming at Elen. He tries to warn her, but it's too late. The guy shoots. Shockingly, a force field springs up around Elen, blocking the bolt and saving her. The would-be assassin freaks out and takes off running, while the guards scramble to chase him down. Tigre realizes the assassin might escape thanks to his head start. So, he quickly calculates the distance, adjusts the messed up bow, and takes a shot into the sky. Against all odds, he hits the guy right in the foot, stopping him in his tracks. The soldiers manage to catch the intruder, and everyone is shocked by Tigre's impressive skill, especially considering the bow was crooked. Even Elen is impressed and praises him for his accuracy. Because of this, Elen offers him a tempting deal: join her army, and she'll treat him like a true member of her kingdom. But Tigre turns her down, explaining that he has a responsibility to protect his own land, Alsace. The next day, Tigre is escorted by a soldier nicknamed Baldy, who is actually one of the guys who sabotaged his bow to embarrass him. Now, though, Baldy is one of Tigre's biggest fans, even shaving his head to apologize for trying to humiliate him. They head to the dining hall and enjoy a delicious meal, where Tigre mentions that back home, he has a maid who loves to cook for him. Later, Tigre heads to archery practice, where a group of men eagerly ask him to teach them his skills. After practice, he goes to the barracks bathroom, where everyone is shocked and look at him like he has the biggest pipe in the entire kingdom.
What do you mean by that?
Sorry guys, I mean he quickly notices the tension. The soldiers who fought in the war aren't too thrilled that an enemy who killed their comrades is getting so much respect. Not wanting to cause any trouble, Tigre leaves and finds another place to take a bath. There, he comes across a small dragon cub, which he figures must be Elen's pet, but accidentally see the heaven on the earth without dying. After seeing her, his dragon wakes up.
What do you mean by that?
So he suddenly runs for bath, but guys, what do you do if you are there? After his bath, he heads back to bed, only to be woken up by Baldy, who tells him they've captured an elderly man with a Brunish accent. Tigre rushes downstairs and spots a cloaked figure sitting on the floor, surrounded by guards. As he gets closer, he realizes it's Bert, his old attendant who served his father before he passed away. Overwhelmed with emotion, they share a heartfelt reunion. Bert, with tears in his eyes, tells Tigre that Alsace is under attack by an enemy lord, and they desperately need him back for the defense. Without hesitation, Tigre heads straight for the main gate, determined to leave immediately. But his path is blocked by Elen, sword in hand. Elen asks him where he's going so late at night, and Tigre, facing off with her, demands she move out of his way. He warns her that if she doesn't step aside, he'll have no choice but to defy her orders, even though she's been a surprisingly good captor. But Elen doesn't budge. She tells him that what he's planning to do is reckless and dangerous. His enemy has 3,000 troops, and he barely has 100. How does he expect to win? Tigre, however, is resolute. He tells her that it doesn't matter, he has to defend his people, no matter the odds. Elen then unsheathes her sword and points it at him, warning that desertion will lead to his execution if he's caught. Shocked, Tigre realizes she could easily capture or kill him if she wanted to, yet she's kept him alive. Thinking quickly, he decides to change his approach. Tigre bows before Elen and requests her help, asking her to lend him troops so he can return to Alsace and defend his people. The room falls silent in disbelief. He's a captive, yet he's boldly asking for soldiers from his captors. To everyone's surprise, Elen laughs, clearly amused by his audacity. She agrees to lend him her troops and even offers to join him in battle on the condition that he brings Alsace under her kingdom and pledges allegiance to her. Without hesitation, Tigre agrees, but only if she promises to rule his people with kindness and justice. Pleased with his answer, Elen smiles and immediately rallies her forces, gathering 1,000 men to prepare for war. They ride tirelessly towards Alsace, where the enemy has already begun their attack. Meanwhile, Tigre's maid, Tigre, after consulting with some of the older soldiers, decides to hide the men in the forests and send the women and children to the temple, hoping it would be safe from attack since targeting a place of worship could turn the entire population against the invaders. The enemy commander, Zhcted, is furious when he sees the town deserted, as he expected a fight. Annoyed, he orders his soldiers to loot the area and, driven by a personal grudge, heads straight for Tigre's house. Inside, he begins trashing the place when he spots a young maid, Tigre, on the staircase, clutching a black bow. Zhcted immediately gives chase, wildly swinging his sword and barely missing her, and rip out her clothes as she runs for her life. I think guys, this pervert wants something else from the maid. She sprints onto the balcony, but he corners her, pinning her down, and is about to strike. Just as Zhcted is about to strike Tigre, Tigre and Elen arrive in the nick of time. Tigre swiftly shoots an arrow, hitting Zhcted in the hand and forcing him to back off. Zhcted screams in pain, clutching his bloody hand, while Tigre shouts for Tigre to jump off the balcony to safety. As she leaps, one of Zhcted's guards manages to trip Tigre's horse, causing him to fall. Despite this, Tigre catches Tigre midair, and Elen uses her wind magic to gently lower them both to the ground, along with Tigre's horse. Elen explains that her legendary sword, a weapon granted only to a War Maiden, allows her to control the wind at will. Tigre thanks her, but suddenly, he notices an arrow speeding toward Tigre. Reacting quickly, he grabs the arrow before it can hit her and knocks it on his bow, firing back and killing the attacker instantly. Though Tigre gets a minor wound on his arm, Tigre tears a piece from her skirt and uses it to fashion a makeshift bandage, patching him up. With the threat still looming, Elen rallies her troops, preparing for a final charge against the enemy before Tigre departs. However, Tigre realizes his bow has cracked from the intense action, making it unusable. Without hesitation, Tigre hands him the black family bow she's been carrying. As Tigre holds the bow, he recalls his father's words, advising him to use it only in dire circumstances. Believing the time has come, he decides to unleash its full potential. The enemy forces quickly retreat from the town, but around 300 soldiers are crushed during the assault, with Zhcted and the remaining troops managing to escape. Later, as they gather to strategize their next move, Tigre is tasked with collecting as much rope as possible from the villagers, which will play a crucial role in their upcoming battle plan. Zhcted, furious with the way the battle has played out, watches as his injured troops limp back into the city. Every time he touches anything, a jolt of pain shoots through his bandaged hand, fueling his anger and desire for revenge against Tigre. Determined to turn the tide, Zhcted decides to stay on the battlefield and set a trap for Tigre's approaching forces. confident in his numbers, Zhcted divides his army into 3 groups, one to ambush Tigre's main force, another to support the ambushers, and the primary group to engage Tigre directly. Tigre, knowing that his forces are severely outnumbered, devises a similar strategy. He splits his troops into 3 sections, taking charge of the main group to confront Zhced's forces head-on. Elen, ready for battle, draws her sword and leads her troops in a fierce charge against the enemy. As the 2 armies clash, the enemy archers unleash a barrage of arrows, threatening to decimate Tigre's soldiers. But Elen's wind magic deflects the arrows, protecting her troops from what could have been a devastating assault. Seeing that Elen is under pressure, Tigre takes aim at the enemy archers and swiftly eliminates 3 of them with a single shot. Elen, impressed by his skill, might see him as a formidable opponent in the future, but for now, she focuses on tearing through the enemy spearmen, leading her forces deeper into enemy lines. Tigre supports her, firing arrows with deadly accuracy, while his loyal attendant Bert ensures he has a constant supply of ammunition. As the cavalry charges collide in the center of the battlefield, chaos erupts. Elen continues her relentless assault, cutting down enemies with precision, while Tigre provides cover, ensuring their advance continues. The battle is intense, with both sides fighting with everything they have, but Elen and Tigre push forward, overpowering the enemy with skill and determination. Suddenly, a thunderous roar echoes across the battlefield, causing everyone to pause as Tigre and Elen sense something amiss. The enemy troops part to reveal a colossal land dragon, its body armored in thick iron plates, lumbering forward. Fear grips the soldiers, but some, driven by the desire for glory, rush toward the beast, only to be mercilessly crushed as the dragon plows through them, leaving a trail of destruction. Tigre attempts to strike the dragon by aiming for its eye, but his arrows are useless against the creature's tough scales. Zhced, confident in his numerical advantage, orders his forces to close in from both sides, surrounding Tigre's troops. Fortunately, Tigre had anticipated such a move. He had stationed part of his army on the flanks, and they now break through the encirclement, freeing the main force from being trapped. With the immediate danger addressed, Elen steps forward to confront the dragon. She commands her soldiers to fall back as she prepares to unleash her magical powers. Focusing her energy, she creates a massive wind orb filled with freezing, turbulent winds. As the dragon charges at her, she compresses the orb into a concentrated blast and hurls it at the beast. The wind attack lifts the dragon into the air before slicing it cleanly in 2, destroying it completely. Elen's troops breathe a collective sigh of relief, while Zhced, devastated by the loss of his dragon, frantically tries to devise a new strategy. Seizing the moment, Tigre orders a strategic withdrawal, making it look like his forces are retreating. Zhced's soldiers take the bait and give chase, hoping to capture the fleeing men. However, they quickly realize their mistake when Tigre's troops pull up a concealed rope, tripping the advancing enemy soldiers and throwing them into disarray. In the ensuing chaos, Tigre's forces make quick work of the disoriented enemies, gaining the upper hand and pushing steadily toward victory. As the battle rages on, Tigre decides it's time to play his final hand. While expertly picking off enemies with his arrows, chaos erupts in Zhced's ranks when scouts report a massive force of 2,000 soldiers approaching from behind. Panic spreads among Zhced's men at the thought of being completely surrounded. Confusion grips Zhced. He was certain that Tigre and Elen's combined forces numbered only around 1,000, making this sudden reinforcement both unexpected and terrifying. Unbeknownst to Zhced, this intimidating army is actually a clever ruse devised by Tigre. In reality, it's a small group of less than 100 men skillfully creating the illusion of a much larger force by utilizing around 2,000 spare horses gathered from the surrounding areas. The sight and sound of so many horses give the impression of overwhelming reinforcements, successfully demoralizing Zhced's troops. In a desperate attempt to regain control, some of Zhced's advisors suggest deploying their second dragon to turn the tide of battle. However, the memory of Elen effortlessly slicing through the first dragon like it was nothing more than paper leaves Zhced hesitant and fearful. In the midst of the chaotic battle and poor visibility, Zhced becomes convinced by a deceptive bluff and panics, believing that his safety is at risk. Fearing for his life, he orders a retreat to protect himself, much to the frustration of his soldiers, who argue that they can still win if they stay and fight. Despite their protests, Zhced's fear overwhelms him, and he insists on fleeing the battlefield. Tigre's forces pursue the retreating enemy and eventually confront Zhced and his main forces. Zhced accuses Tigre of treachery for aligning with Elen, whom Tigre had recently fought against. Tigre, unfazed, declares that Zhced will pay for the damage done to his region. In a bold move, Zhced proposes a duel, hoping to resolve the conflict with a single combat challenge. He feels confident in this strategy, despite knowing he is at a disadvantage because he is proficient only with a bow and arrow, clearly ill-suited for close combat. Elen advises against accepting the duel, suggesting that they could simply annihilate Zhced's forces. However, Tigre, driven more by ego than strategy, insists on proceeding with the duel. Mounted on his horse with his bow ready, Tigre faces off against Xian, who is armed with a lance and shield. Xian taunts Tigre, claiming that his bow is useless against him. Undeterred, Tigre begins shooting arrows at Xian, but Xian skillfully blocks them with his shield. Tigre persists, shooting arrows at the same spot on the shield repeatedly. When Xian finally charges, Tigre looses one final arrow. This arrow shatters Xian's shield and strikes him in the arm, causing him to cry out in pain. Tigre's forces erupt in cheers as their leader emerges victorious in the duel. As the duel concludes, Xian's forces rush to shield their commander, and the chaos of the battle resumes with Elen's army advancing. Amidst the fray, Xian's dragon, carrying him to safety, takes flight. Xian, abandoning his troops to their fate, flees while laughing maniacally at Tigre's apparent inability to exact justice. Tigre watches in frustration and disappointment as Xian escapes, feeling the sting of unfulfilled vengeance against the man who had harmed his villagers. Just as it seems Xian will evade punishment, a mysterious voice directs Tigre to aim at the dragon. To his surprise, the voice emanates from his bow. Following the voice's guidance, Tigre uses his magical bow in combination with Len's magic to target the dragon. With precise aim, he releases an arrow that strikes the dragon. The dragon is immediately killed, and its lifeless body plummets into a nearby lake, carrying Xian down with it. The death of their commander saps the enemy forces' morale. Faced with the loss of their leader and the overwhelming odds, they quickly surrender, ending the conflict. The next morning, Zhcted enters the room only to find Tigre giving his long sword to Elen. Elen playfully holding a sword near Tigre's mouth.
We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
Which sparks feelings of jealousy within her. Seeing her master so at ease with another woman unsettles her. When she learns that Tigre plans to visit Alsace, she eagerly prepares a meal and dresses up, intending to accompany him. Tigre, however, gently turns her down, explaining that he won't have time for a relaxing outing. But Zhcted is determined and insists on coming along, so they set off together. Meanwhile, Elen receives a summons to Zhcted's capital, Leitmeritz, where she must explain her unauthorized involvement in the conflict against Muan to the king. Lim, Elen's trusted aide, questions why Elen places so much trust in Tigre. Elen admits that beyond her romantic interest, she is deeply impressed by Tigre's innate abilities and potential. Although Lim understands, she remains skeptical, doubting that this is enough reason to place so much trust in someone Elen barely knows. Upon arriving at the palace, Elen tries to justify her actions, explaining that Count Tigre enlisted her help to safeguard Alsace and maintain peace. The king, furious at her for acting without his approval, creates a tense atmosphere until Safia Oberdas, another war maiden, intervenes to soothe his anger. Safia explains that Elen had to act swiftly because battles wait for no one, though she also cautions that Zhcted should avoid entanglement in Brune's internal affairs. The king deliberates on how to punish Elen for her disobedience. Outside the royal court, Elen ends up in a petty quarrel with Ludmilla Lurie, another war maiden, who mocks her for once again earning the king's ire. Safia steps in to break up the argument, reminding them that Ludmilla's family has strong ties to the royal family and could sway the king's opinion. She advises Elen to proceed with caution, aware that her alliance with Tigre will likely draw more enemies than she can manage. Back in Brune, the situation remains calm for the time being, as their Nardier and Gainlon's forces have withdrawn, leaving Alsace undisturbed. However, this peace is fragile. Bernardier, enraged by the crushing defeat his son Xian suffered, begins plotting his revenge. He instructs his sorcerer to prepare a new set of dragons, which will take about a month, in preparation for a full-scale assault on Tigre's forces. Bernardier also plans to hire a notorious group of assassins to eliminate Tigre and intends to enlist another war maiden to confront and defeat Elen. Upon arriving in Alsace, Tigre ensures that the locals are safe before taking a moment to rest. During his nap, he dreams of his childhood and the fond memories he shared with his late father. When he wakes up, he notices Zhcted still asleep beside him. Gently waking her, she quickly becomes flustered and apologizes for dozing off. Later, they head out to meet with Earl Mashes but are surprised to find Lim already there. Tigre explains his alliance with the war maiden Elen and discusses his plans to take on Duke Thenardier. Mashes inquires if Tigre intends to ally with Duke Gainlon, but Tigre firmly states that he has no interest in joining forces with either of the dukes. With Mashes' support, who heads to Brune's capital to present Tigre's case to the king and advocate for his cause, Tigre begins rallying support from neighboring counties. The local nobles pledge their backing, assuring him that he is on the path to becoming a significant third force in Brune. Later, Tigre, Elen, and Lim convene to plan their next moves. Elen shares that she has received her king's permission to take control of Alsace, but only under the condition that it will eventually be handed over to Zhcted, thereby relinquishing it from Brune. She also explains that King Victor of Zhcted is keeping his options open, likely to benefit his own kingdom, and that her main concern is the other War Maidens, who could turn against her at any time. One such threat is Ludmilla, who is known for her strict adherence to rules. As if summoned by their discussion, Ludmilla suddenly appears, interrupting their conversation. She introduces herself to Tigre as the War Maiden of the Cleansing Sword and requests a private audience with him. The group relocates their meeting to the village of Roderick. However, on the way, they realize they've walked into a trap. Without warning, they are ambushed by Serash, a group of elite assassins hired by Duke Thenardier. The first assassin fires a dart at Tigre, but he narrowly avoids it and quickly retaliates by pinning the assassin to a tree with his arrow. Lim takes down the next assassin but gets bitten by a poisonous snake, causing her to collapse. Elen swiftly kills the viper, while Tigre quickly draws out the venom to slow its effects. As more assassins close in, Ludmilla uses her magical spear, Lavias, to freeze and eliminate them with her ice magic. They then rush Lim to Roderick for urgent medical care. After Lim recovers, the group explores the marketplace in Roderick. They stumble upon some delicious street food, but Ludmilla, trying to maintain her noble composure, initially refuses to eat despite her hunger. Tigre manages to convince her to try some, which sparks jealousy in Elen and leads to a minor argument between the two War Maidens. During their exchange, Ludmilla comments that Tigre is a good man but too submissive to Elen, which might hurt his chances with other women. The argument ends when Ludmilla decides to return to her homeland, Alsace. Elen suspects that Ludmilla is mobilizing her forces toward Leitmeritz to limit Elen's movements and support Thenardier. Although Ludmilla personally has no desire for conflict with Tigre, she feels obligated to maintain the alliance with Thenardier for Alsace's sake. Elen's suspicion is confirmed, so she and Tigre gather their allies to discuss their next steps. They face two choices: confront Ludmilla immediately to remove her as a threat or reinforce Alsace to prepare for the looming invasion by Thenardier and Gainlon. Tigre stresses the need to protect their allies and suggests sending an envoy to Ludmilla. However, Ludmilla ignores the envoy, leading both sides to ready their armies for battle. As Ludmilla organizes her forces, she dismisses her soldiers' concerns about the necessity of fighting Elen, insisting that she must honor the long-standing alliance between her family and the Brune nobility. The battle takes place on the snowy plains of Vion, but it ends in a stalemate, with heavy losses on both sides forcing them to withdraw. After the battle, Tigre, Elen, and their allies reconvene to reassess their strategy. They realize how strong Ludmilla's army is, confirming the rumors that she has the best defense among all the War Maidens. Elen boasts that she could easily defeat Ludmilla, recalling how she once embarrassed her in a duel. She mentions that their ongoing rivalry is rooted in a trivial feud between their great-grandmothers over a young man. As the situation unfolds, they discover that Ludmilla has pulled back her forces to the nearly impenetrable Tatra fortress, leaving Elen's army no choice but to prepare for a prolonged siege. The only route to the fortress is heavily defended, making any advance incredibly challenging. Ludmilla has also used her ice abilities to fortify the gates, making them even more resilient. Despite repeated attempts, the siege drags on with no progress, and the soldiers begin to suffer in the harsh conditions. Desperate, Elen decides to launch a daring solo attack on Ludmilla's troops, but both Lim and Tigre oppose her risky plan. Annoyed by their refusal, Elen is eventually calmed by Tigre, who reassures her that she is incredibly important to him, only second to his homeland of Alsace. He persuades her to abandon her reckless idea, offering a more cautious strategy instead. Disguised in a bear costume, Tigre embarks on a mission to scout for a hidden way into the fortress. After days of searching, exhausted and hungry, Tigre manages to hunt down a fox with a well-placed shot. While in the woods, he encounters Ludmilla, who is impressed by his precise archery skills. Still in disguise, Tigre introduces himself as a hunter, and they share a quiet moment over tea by a campfire. Ludmilla is struck by his skill and invites him to join her forces, but Tigre respectfully declines, explaining that he has responsibilities elsewhere. Sensing that something is weighing on her, Tigre encourages Ludmilla to open up. She eventually confides in him about the heavy burden of being a war maiden, expressing her frustration at having to work with people she dislikes for the sake of her country, all while hiding her true feelings to protect her family's honor. The following morning, Tigre cleverly follows the tracks left by Ludmilla to uncover a back route to Tatra Fortress via a seldom-used rear entrance. He returns the next day accompanied by Elen and a force of 100 soldiers, intent on storming the rear gate. However, they encounter reinforced defenses prepared by Ludmilla, making their assault more challenging than anticipated. Unwilling to retreat and give their enemy the upper hand, Elen decides to confront the obstacle head-on. She sprints towards the gate, conjuring a violent tornado aimed at shattering the barriers, but her initial attempt fails. This alerts the fortress archers, who begin targeting her with a volley of arrows. Quickly, Tigre rescues Elen from the barrage using his learned magical abilities. Mirroring the tactics he employed in a previous battle, Tigre unleashes a fierce cyclone, effectively blowing a hole through the gate and opening a path for their troops. Inside the fortress, Elen and Ludmilla square off in a dramatic duel, showcasing their respective magical abilities. Elen advances with her sword, but Ludmilla parries her strikes. The battle intensifies as Ludmilla summons icy projectiles, which Elen dissipates with forceful gusts of wind. Not deterred, Ludmilla erects a massive ice spire aiming directly at Elen, who narrowly avoids it, landing safely on even ground. They charge at each other once more, resulting in a powerful explosion of wind and ice that carves a crater into the ground. Breathing heavily from the exertion, both warriors momentarily pause. While Elen's soldiers are eager to intervene, she signals them to hold back, confident that the end of their fierce confrontation is imminent. Just as the duel reaches a critical moment, a Serash assassin suddenly lunges at Elen and Ludmilla. Before he can strike, Tigre swiftly shoots an arrow into his head, instantly killing him. It remains unclear who the assassin's intended target was, either Ludmilla or Elen. Surprised by Tigre's intervention, Ludmilla realizes that the hunter she met in the woods was Tigre in disguise. Grateful, she thanks him, but questions why he would save her. Tigre explains that he saved her life to reciprocate the kindness she showed him when they shared tea in the woods, mentioning how the tea warmed him and tasted exceptionally good. Touched by the gesture, Ludmilla asks Tigre what he wants in return. Tigre requests that she remain neutral in Brune's ongoing civil war. He admits that while he would prefer an alliance, he understands that she stands to gain nothing from such a partnership. Ludmilla agrees to stay neutral, withdrawing from the conflict and ceasing her support for the Thenardier. This decision allows Tigre to concentrate on his primary objective, the battle against Duke Thenardier. Despite Ludmilla's neutrality, the Thenardier continues to escalate the conflict by involving the royal knights, including one named Roland, touted as one of the greatest knights in Brune. A month after the Tatra fortress battle, Tigre returns to Brune with an army of 5,000 Zhcted knights, having garnered additional military support from neighboring counties. He leads his forces to Territoire, establishing a base in a region controlled by Duke Thenardier. The combined forces of Alsace and Leitmeritz are humorously named the Silver Meteor Storm Troops. Lim criticizes the name, arguing that it sounds childish name, which is suitable for 5-year-old child, not a battlefield force. During a tactical meeting, the session is abruptly disrupted by Baldi, who reports that a minor altercation has broken out among the troops. With the recent unification of the Leitmeritz and Alsace soldiers, such trivial disputes over trivial matters like cloud shapes have become frequent. Disturbed by the silence from the capital of Brune and Earl Mashes, Tigre heads to the central region of Sonir seeking updates, but his efforts yield no significant news. Lord Augur suggests Tigre take a break at one of the local leisure centers to ease his stress, but instead, Tigre opts for some quiet time by a riverbank. It's there that he encounters Sophia, who reveals herself as one of the 7 War Maidens. She was dispatched by the King of Zhcted to clarify the kingdom's position on Brune's internal conflict after an unsettling silence from the king. Sophia explains that Zhcted officially has no part in the conflict, emphasizing that Elen acted independently as a mercenary. However, she was unable to deliver this message directly to the King of Brune due to his severe illness. Sophia also informs Tigre that he has been officially accused of treason, stripped of his titles, and that Alsace is now considered direct property of the king, to be managed by a newly appointed magistrate. Sophia's encounter with Mashes in the capital provides some relief, as they had been worried about his safety. She also reassures Elen that currently, no other War Maiden seeks to align against Tigre, reducing their concerns about facing multiple threats. However, the situation escalates as the Royal Knights, led by Roland, the Black Knight and leader of the Order of Navarre, are advancing towards their location with orders to capture Tigre. Known for his prowess and undefeated record since being knighted at age 13 with the national treasure Durandal as his weapon, Roland's approach is alarming. In response, Tigre convenes with his allies to discuss the unexpected betrayal by the king, puzzled by the decision to target him while overlooking the defiance of Gainlon and the Thenardier. Despite their attempts to communicate with Roland, all envoys are rejected. Faced with escalating threats and the realization that the capital has turned against him, Tigre and his group resolve to seek support from the Zhcted army to counter the impending assault. As the Battle of Orange unfolds, Roland, leading the charge, inflicts a severe blow to the Silver Meteor Storm troops. Elen, attempting to confront him directly, is quickly outmatched and knocked off her horse after just a brief exchange. Seeing their leader in danger, several members of her army rush to her aid, but Roland meets them with his sword, cutting them down with swift, powerful swings before Elen can call them back. As the Battle of Orange intensifies, Roland acknowledges that it's been a long time since he's encountered a fighter like Elen, who truly challenges his skills. Recognizing Roland's overwhelming strength, Elen knows she must unleash her sword's full potential. However, before she can activate her sword's powers, Tigre shoots an arrow high into the air. Roland dismisses the shot as a foolish mistake, but to his astonishment, the arrow strikes his horse, killing it instantly. In the chaos, Tigre manages to pull Elen to safety, though he suffers a severe wound, a deep slash across his chest. As Roland's army closes in on them, their situation looks dire until Safia appears, urging Tigre and Elen to flee while she handles the situation. She conjures Viltaria, a dazzling spell that forms a strong, impenetrable barrier of light. Some of Roland's less cautious soldiers charge the barrier, only to be absorbed into the wall along with their horses. When Roland arrives, he questions whether the wall is a product of magic, confident that no barrier can stop him. As the magic of the barrier begins to fade, Roland shatters it with a single strike and engages Safia in brief, fierce combat. However, after some time, Safia vanishes with a chant, having distracted Roland long enough to ensure Tigre and Elen's escape. Roland is initially puzzled by Safia's actions, but he soon realizes she was buying time for Tigre and Elen. Just then, he receives a report that his rear forces were ambushed by reinforcements led by Mashes. Sensing the strategic shift, Roland orders his troops to fall back and halt their pursuit. Reflecting on recent events, Roland recalls a meeting with Duke Gainlon, who informed him that the king was too ill to receive visitors, even someone of Roland's stature. Gainlon insisted that Roland eliminate Tigre and his followers, claiming it was the king's direct order after branding Tigre a traitor. This interaction now seems suspicious to Roland, casting doubt on the duke's trustworthiness. Determined to uncover the truth, Roland decides to conclude his current campaign against Tigre swiftly and seek an audience with the king directly, regardless of the obstacles, to clarify the murky circumstances surrounding his orders. At the camp, Tigre's health is rapidly declining because his wound is very severe. When they inquire about what transpired in the capital, Mashes reveals that he was unable to meet the king due to his supposed illness. After managing to covertly enter the palace, Mashes discovered that the palace was effectively controlled by Lords Gainlon and the Nardier. During a private meeting, Prime Minister Badwin showed him the king's dire condition. The king, devastated by his son's death at the Battle of Denante, had regressed to a childlike state, playing with building blocks. Gainlon and the Nardier are exploiting the king's vulnerability to orchestrate their agenda, falsely presenting their actions as imperial directives to eliminate Tigre. They even influenced Roland to attack Tigre under this guise. Shortly after his discovery, Mashes was ambushed by assassins, presumably dispatched by one of the dukes. Safia, who was nearby, stepped in just in time to help him defeat the assassins. With Tigre incapacitated, Elen assumes leadership of the army. She comforts Tigre, who is concerned about his capacity to lead, by assuring him that she will take command in his absence. Subsequently, Elen connects with Safia, who, despite her role as an envoy, pledges her support in the upcoming battle, extending her involvement beyond her diplomatic responsibilities. Meanwhile, Roland confers with another royal knight and discovers that the Nardier is actually the instigator of the conflict, having attacked Alsace without any apparent reason. Despite this revelation, Roland decides not to halt the war efforts due to the ongoing threat posed by the Zhcted armies within the kingdom. With the injured and sick remaining at camp, the Silver Meteor Storm troop mobilizes for battle. They ingeniously alter the river's path using sandbags, transforming the plain into a swampy terrain to slow down the enemy's advance. By dawn, they position themselves to face south, while Ronald's army forms a crescent shape across from them. Ronald's strategy involves a three-pronged attack. His first squad aims to engage the Silver Meteor's vanguard, the second will flank, and the third will spread out to support the first two if they encounter resistance. As the battle commences, Elen lures Ronald away from his main forces. She and Safia combine their wind and light powers in an attempt to overpower him. Initially, their efforts seem effective, but Ronald, wielding his formidable sword, Durandal, effortlessly cleaves through their magical assault, surprising the War Maidens. Resolute, Roland advances towards them, intent on concluding the battle swiftly. Back at the camp, Tigre regains consciousness to find his bow emitting a mysterious glow, with Tita by his side. Led by the enchanted bow, he travels to a secluded temple dedicated to Troll, the goddess of night, darkness, and death. Confused, Tigre demands to know why he was brought there. Suddenly, the goddess possesses Tita, revealing that Tigre was drawn there not by her calling, but by his own quest for power. She offers him enhanced abilities if he can pass a test, shooting Tita with an arrow. Tigre imbues the arrow with his newfound powers, managing to disperse it just before it strikes her, sparing her harm. Impressed by his restraint and skill, Troll grants him the powers. With his new abilities, Tigre hastily returns to the battlefield, determined to turn the tide in their favor. Tigre arrives just as Roland approaches Elen and Safia, managing to hit Roland's armor from afar, delaying his advance towards the women. Elen and Sophia then explain that their contract with Tigre was specifically to help defeat Lord Thenardier, and that once they receive their payment, they intend to return to Zhcted. They encourage Roland to support their cause against Thenardier, but he declines, steadfast in his duty as a royal knight to obey only the king's direct commands. As the battle escalates, Tigre, still grappling with his wounds, gathers his strength to target Roland using his recently gained powers. Roland tries to fend off Tigre's attack with his sword, Jendel, successfully blocking the initial onslaught. However, the force of their clash triggers a huge explosion, forming a deep crater on the battlefield. Remarkably, Roland remains standing but soon kneels, overcome by a sudden paralysis in his arms caused by the intense encounter. Shortly thereafter, Tigre also collapses from exhaustion and his injuries. With Roland's unexpected surrender, the Order of Nevar retreats, having sustained severe losses, losing more than half of their force in the skirmish. Tigre's army is now poised to confront the Thenardier directly. The following day, knights are busy on the battlefield, collecting the remains of the fallen to set up a burial site. After discovering the deceitful maneuvers of Gainlon and the Thenardier, Roland resolves to make amends by ensuring Tigre gets a direct audience with the king. Despite warnings about the risks involved, citing Mash's narrow escape, Roland is adamant about redeeming himself. He first pays his respects at the new burial site, then, as a token of his commitment to Tigre's cause, he leaves his esteemed sword, Durandal, with Tigre. Confident and resolute, Roland then sets off for the capital, determined to confront the injustices and set things right. Upon arriving at the imperial palace, Roland finds himself ensnared in a trap set by Duke Gainlon. Isolated in a room, Gainlon taunts him for daring to appear at the capital after his defeat to Tigre. In a cruel act, Gainlon releases a swarm of lethal bees, subjecting Roland to a horrific demise. Despite this, Roland meets his end with dignity, standing upright to his last breath, a testament to his unyielding valor. Meanwhile, Elen receives an urgent call to assist War Maiden Alexandra Sasha Alson in Legnica. Sasha, the ruler of Rignitz, is bedridden with a severe illness and now faces an attack from another War Maiden. Elen feels a deep sense of duty to aid her, bound by an oath they shared to support one another in times of crisis. On a recent visit, Elen found Sasha in a dire state, resembling more a living corpse than a leader, yet her dragon gear still recognizes her as its rightful owner, compelling her to fulfill her role despite her debilitating condition. Thus, Elen prepares to support and potentially fight on behalf of Sasha. At the same time, Sophia returns to her kingdom, and Tigre expresses his gratitude for her support. He is then joined by Rurik, who kneels before him to pledge his loyalty. However, the atmosphere sours with the grim news of Roland's execution, sparking tensions in the capital. The execution, carried out by Gainlon without consulting the Thenardier, raises concerns about potential threats from the west, now unprotected by any knight. Gainlon, unfazed by the repercussions, informs the Thenardier that the Muan army is advancing by land and sea towards the southern border, intent on enslaving their people. Muel, known for its aggressive slave trade practices, poses a significant threat as its soldiers begin attacking Brune and taking captives. In response to the crisis, the Thenardier splits his forces. 7,000 soldiers head to the southern border to counter the Muan advance, while a second contingent of 13,000 remains in the capital under the guise of protection, but mainly to keep a watchful eye on Gainlon, who is amassing forces at the northern border. As the night deepens, Tigre stays up late strategizing. Tita, his loyal servant, serves him a meal and urges him not to overexert himself. She agrees to stay behind with Bertrand on the condition that Tigre returns safely. Later, Baldy asks Tigre about their odds of victory, but instead of a confident hero's answer, Tigre soberly reveals they are outnumbered 20-1. He then consults with Mashas and others, seeking their counsel and asking for a crucial favor to help navigate the looming battles. While on a reconnaissance mission with Rurik and other volunteers, Tigre sees firsthand the cruel treatment of the captives. Moved by their plight, he resolves to prioritize their rescue. During the mission, Tigre faces a dilemma about using his mystical black bow, still unsure of his ability to control its formidable powers. During their operation, Tigre saves a captive who is fleeing from Mualian soldiers. He comforts the frightened woman, assuring her of her safety and identifying himself as a fellow Brunian to alleviate her fears. Subsequently, Tigre meets with Royal Knight Gerald, who uses his expertise in strategy and logistics to help devise a plan for rescuing the Brunians. Gerald calculates that they are currently short on supplies and manpower. Given that the Mualians might use the captives as human shields, a direct assault could be disastrous. Thus, Tigre comes up with a strategic solution to offset their disadvantages. He sends a contingent of 200 cavalry to provoke the enemy on one flank. This action forces the Mualian general to react by sending 3,000 of his troops, consisting of archers and spearmen, to eliminate the threat. Tigre's smaller force then leads these Mualian troops into a strategically chosen narrow pass that ends in a dead end, where Tigre's main force of about 2,000 soldiers is waiting in ambush. Caught off guard and unable to maneuver, the Mualian soldiers at the front line try to retreat when they see the size of Tigre's army, but it's already too late. Tigre's forces swiftly defeat the 3,000 Mualian troops. After the battle, Tigre's army collects the enemy's abandoned ammunition, repurposing it to supply the Silver Meteor Storm troops as they prepare for the next phase of their campaign. Tigre orchestrates numerous small-scale skirmishes to gradually diminish the strength of the Mualian army. After several successful ambushes, the enemy's numbers dwindle from 20,000 to 18,000 soldiers. In retaliation for these guerrilla tactics, General Kashum ruthlessly executes several Brune civilians, escalating the conflict. He then dispatches a force of 3,000 soldiers ahead of the main army, assuming Tigre would not dare to confront such odds directly. Defying expectations, Tigre leads a small force of 600 soldiers to face the main Mualian army head-on. Kashum mocks the Brunians for choosing an archer as their leader, undervaluing the role of archers in their military hierarchy. Tigre retorts that the Mualians deserve punishment for their atrocities against civilians. As Kashum orders his archers to target Tigre, battle cries suddenly erupt from the cliffs above, signaling that Tigre has the support of a large contingent of Zhcted troops. Underestimating Tigre again, Kashum is taken aback as the Zhcted forces charge down. Amidst the chaos, Tigre expertly lands an arrow that fatally strikes Kashum in the head. The general's death triggers a disorganized retreat by the Mualian forces, which Tigre and his army aggressively pursue. After the battle, Tigre frees Brune citizens who had been enslaved by the invaders. While many mourn the loss of their loved ones and express resentment towards Tigre for not intervening sooner, a young girl approaches him to express her gratitude for avenging her father's death and securing her freedom. Despite the low casualties sustained by the Silver Meteor Storm troops, they are severely low on supplies and need time to recuperate. The Mualian army has lost over a quarter of their forces, but intelligence from prisoners reveals that an additional 40,000 troops are en route, with some already arriving in smaller groups. Tigre leads a cavalry unit to confront the first wave of these invaders, attempting to use the wind to enhance his arrow shots, though it proves insufficient to halt their advance. Just as the situation appears dire, Tigre is shocked to see an army cresting the nearby hills, fearing it to be enemy reinforcements. However, it turns out to be Ludmilla, arriving with additional Zhcted forces in a healthy state. Meanwhile, Elen and Lim reach Legnica to assist War Maiden Alexandra Sasha Alsen, who is in a dire state of health and weary of her responsibilities. Despite her frailty, she is bound to her role as long as her dragon twin swords recognize her as their owner. Sasha informs Elen that War Maiden Elizabeth Elisa F is attacking her territory as retribution for a past incident involving pirates, which Lisa claims was exacerbated by Sasha's forces. Elen promises her unwavering support to protect Legnica. She also shares stories of Tigre's exploits with Sasha, suggesting that she might find him to be an admirable young man and expressing hope that Sasha will have the opportunity to meet him someday. Amid the escalating conflict, the commander of the Muan army, intrigued by rumors of a sword maiden's involvement with Tigre, contemplates forging an alliance with her to assist Tigre against the Nardir. He decides that the Sword Maiden's beauty, as rumored, would be a deciding factor in his allegiance. A beautiful ally would inspire cooperation, but an unattractive one might not fare as well. At the Silver Meteor Storm Troops base camp, Tigre meets with Mila to discuss forming an alliance. Tigre's apparent desperation in negotiations leads Mila to switch roles from a potential ally to a mentor, teaching him how to negotiate with the poise and confidence of a seasoned warrior. Eventually, Mila agrees to lend her 4,000 troops in exchange for a reciprocal favor from Tigre. They then strategize on how to confront the invading army led by Commander Balamir, also known as Barbaros. Barbaros is a formidable adversary, renowned for his tactical prowess in drastically outnumbering scenarios. With the storm troops nearing exhaustion and only able to sustain one more battle, they plan to resolve the conflict in a decisive engagement. Mila suggests using the powerful bow, Arar, that Tigre used to shatter Tatra Fortress's gate. However, Tigre is hesitant as he still hasn't mastered the bow's capabilities and often experiences debilitating side effects post-use. Acknowledging the risks, they decide to keep the bow as a last resort. Mila outlines the strategic options, targeting the enemy commander or disrupting their supply lines. Given the might of Barbaros' forces, disrupting the supply might not be feasible, and targeting Barbaros directly could prove equally challenging. After extensive deliberation, Mila proposes a high-risk strategy that could potentially turn the tide against the vast Muan forces. Meanwhile, Tigre learns that one of the rescued captives refuses to eat. He personally attempts to feed her, but she requests his soup instead. The woman introduces herself as Rain and asks Tigre for a small favor before he departs. Simultaneously, Elen leads a combined force of 3,000 from Legnica and Laritz to confront the War Maiden Lisa in the northeast. Lisa is noted for her striking heterochromia, which gives her distinctively colored irises. Before Elen's departure, Sasha pulls Lim aside to entrust her with protecting Elen. Sasha emphasizes that while Elen's dragon gear provides certain protections, the real safeguard against the multitude of enemies, and even potentially treacherous allies, will be the loyalty and vigilance of friends like Lim. As their armies engage, Lim tries to join Elen on the front line to offer protection, but Elen instructs her to remain in command of the troops, emphasizing that only war maidens can effectively confront each other. Elen then dismounts and meets Lisa at the outskirts for a decisive duel. Armed with her wind sword, Elen faces Lisa, who wields a lightning-imbued whip. The battle intensifies as Elen summons a powerful gust, which Lisa counters with a burst of electricity, momentarily knocking Elen down. However, Elen quickly recovers, and after a fierce clash of elemental powers, she manages to overpower Lisa, pushing her back and forcing her to surrender. Despite her initial desire to continue until she defeats Lisa completely, Elen hesitates when Lisa warns that their prolonged duel is wasting precious time, especially since the war with Tigre is escalating. Lisa reveals that Gainlon and the Nardir might have already mobilized against Tigre, who is facing a manpower shortage against the formidable Muan army of 40,000. Lisa then proposes a ceasefire, offering to withdraw her forces from Legnica and agree to a one-year non-aggression pact if Elen backs down. Elen agrees but insists that Lisa must apologize to Sasha for the invasion. Once the pact is settled, Elen quickly reorganizes her forces to march towards Leitmeritz. Meanwhile, an envoy from Mila delivers a stern message to Barbaros, denouncing him as an unjust invader and demanding his withdrawal from Brunian territory. Despite acknowledging Mila's point, Barbaros refuses to retreat merely on the words of a war maiden and readies his troops, dispersing them into 7 units to enhance their responsiveness to any surprise attacks. As the scene shifts to the impending battle between Tigre's forces and Barbaros, Tigre's army assumes formation as snow begins to fall, signaling the start of the Battle of Orya. Muan scouts report back on Tigre's defensive preparations, noting the fortified positions on the hills and the presence of multiple banners, indicating a coalition of armies. Despite ongoing assaults, the Muan forces struggle to make significant impacts, with poor archery from Tigre's side leading to no casualties. The scouts, observing only a few spears, mistakenly conclude they face a numerically inferior opponent. Tigre's Silver Meteor Storm troops take strategic positions atop one of the shorter hills of Orya, effectively transforming it into a makeshift fortress. This position allows them to hold a strong defensive line, as the Mualian forces mistakenly assess one of the hills as devoid of enemy presence due to its snow cover. Barbaros confidently positions 4 of his 7 divisions at the base to lay siege. He sends the remaining 3 divisions past the 2 hills to capture what they believe to be fleeing refugees, intending to use them as hostages. However, this group proves to be a decoy, and they are ambushed by the remaining stormtroopers and Mila's army emerging from the 2nd hill, which had seemed unoccupied. Barbaros' archers unleash a volley of arrows at the attackers, but Mila swiftly conjures a magical barrier that transforms the arrows into ice shards, neutralizing the threat. This maneuver provides Tigre with an opening, allowing him to take down several enemy soldiers with his arrows. When news of the ambush reaches Barbaros, he remains composed, having anticipated strong tactics from Mila given her reputation. Yet, he is unaware that the supposed refugees are actually 2,000 disguised soldiers led by Rurik, who launch a devastating surprise attack on the Mualian 5th Division. The real refugees had agreed to Tigre's plan after much persuasion, given their dire conditions and the promise of safety under his strategy. This feint allows Tigre's forces to surround and swiftly defeat the 5th Division. Energized by their success, Tigre and Mila then set their sights on the 6th and 7th Divisions. In response, Barbaros summons the 4th Division for reinforcement while maintaining the siege with his other units. Despite the reinforcements, Tigre and Mila find themselves cornered by the combined forces of the 6th and 4th Divisions, with the Silver Meteor Storm troops beginning to falter from exhaustion. As they struggle against overwhelming odds, Barbaros confidently prepares for a direct confrontation, relying on his arrow-proof formations. Caught in a dire situation and running low on arrows, Tigre urges Mila to retreat for her safety. However, Mila firmly rejects the idea, reminding him of her status and resolve as a war maiden. Her determination reignites their spirit, and together they rally to continue the fight with all their strength. Another army comes charging in, and just when things are looking bad for Tigre, new troops arrive from the north to join the fight against the Muan army. After hearing Mesh's call for help, some knights show up to back Tigre. Emil brings 500 knights from the Order of Prech, Shi adds 1,500 from the Order of Ludus, and August shows up with 2,000 from the Order of Calvados. While Emil and Shi jump into the battle, August tells Tigre he got a letter from Roland and Olivier asking him to team up. He apologizes for not helping Tigre earlier, but his role as a royal knight kept him busy even though he used to be in Alsace's army. The arrival of these knights gives Tigre and Mila a breather. They restock on arrows and get ready to keep fighting. Even though there are now 5,000 reinforcements for Tigre, Barbaros arrogantly refuses to retreat. Instead, he sends his 4th division to weaken Tigre's main army even more. But then, another 3,000 knights arrive from the northwest, bringing Tigre's total reinforcements to 8,000. Seeing this, Barbaros decides to pull back and send some troops to the southern part of Brune to focus on conquering that area. At this point, about 30% of Barbaros' men have been killed. To make things worse, he learns that his naval forces were wiped out when their ships sank. They've been defeated by Duke Darnard's army too. Now, Barbaros is left with only 30,000 troops, down from 8,000 before. These setbacks force Barbaros to retreat completely from Brune and send an envoy to Silver Meteor Storm's base camp to congratulate them on their win. He also gives Tigre an honorary title, Silverash, meaning someone who can shoot meteors. After the formalities, Mila and Tigre try to figure out Barbaros' real motives, but Tigre grabbed that bitch claps full night. The next morning, Elen arrives at the base camp and finds Tigre and Mila sleeping close together. This angers Elen and leads to another argument between her and Mila about Tigre. Meanwhile, Lim apologizes to Masha for not being there during the war. She admits she didn't initially believe in Tigre, but now he's proven himself as a major force in Brune. Mila invites Tigre to her tent for tea, but Tigre suggests meeting another time and heads to a quiet spot outside to talk with Elen. He apologizes for the losses her soldiers endured during his battles. Elen reassures him by holding his hand as they lie on the grass, and Tigre promises to never forget those who died for him. After defeating Muan and traveling for 4 days, Tigre and his army set up camp at Pia's new alliance with the Order of Pi helps strengthen their position. While Tigre sleeps, a war maiden named Valentina appears through a magical portal created by her dragon gear. She stands by his bedside without doing anything and says they'll meet again soon before vanishing. In the morning, Elen and Mila bicker as usual. Mila tells Elen she should have stayed in Zhcted, but Elen was worried about her men and came to Pell. Elen calls Mila a homesick baby and tells her not to worry about her because her soldiers are strong. Even though Elen arrived late and missed the battle with Muan, she admits she was delayed and thanks Mila for supporting Tigre. Elen then says Mila's job is done and she should return to Zhcted, leaving her man alone. Later, Tigre is summoned for a meeting with Masha and Lim about the late Prince of Brune. They've heard there's someone in the camp who resembles the prince. During the meeting, Bertrand interrupts, saying a young girl named Rain wants to see Tigre. She's nervous at first, but Tigre reassures her that she has nothing to fear. In the council room, Rain reveals she was actually Prince Rignez, the heir to the Brune Empire's throne, and gives her full name as Arnaz Estelwar Bastien to Charles. Masha is taken aback by the long name. The revelation shocks everyone, so Lim asks her to prove her identity. Rain recalls a childhood memory with Tigre when they met on the streets of Vincent's and went into the woods together. After hunting, Tigre confirms the story, surprising everyone since they thought the prince had been killed in battle. Rain explains that during the first battle of Din, an assassin used the chaos of the night raid to attack her. She faked her death and escaped to survive. Elen asks why she was pretending to be a boy. Rain explains she did it to protect her mother's honor, as Brune's society devalues queens who can't produce male heirs. She also pretended to be male to increase her chances of succeeding her father as queen, since female heirs have very slim chances. Hearing her story, Elen and Mela argue that helping Rain could be problematic. If people find out the prince is actually a girl, it might undermine their confidence in Tigre. Tigre suggests they should talk to the king, but Masha reminds him of the king's unstable mental state. When Tigre asks why Rain trusts him enough to reveal her secret, Rain explains that she has found him to be trustworthy despite the false accusations of treachery. To everyone's surprise, Rain reveals that she tested Tigre by asking him to bathe her. Because he was respectful and disciplined, she trusted him. Tigre agrees to help her if she can prove her lineage. Rain says there's a secret door to a shrine in Arium, Duke Galen's territory, that only royal family members know how to open. Since Prime Minister Badwin knows about it, it will serve as proof of her genealogy. Tigre decides to go to Arium. Before they set off, Duke Darnard gives Tigre 5 new dragons for the battle, including a 2-headed dragon and a fire breather. 2 of these dragons are bound in chains with special powers to easily defeat even powerful opponents like the War Maidens. Meanwhile, Ganon is plotting his next moves, anticipating that Tigre will try to prove Rain's lineage. He praises himself for the poison working on the king and plans to burn down his own capital before fleeing. Ganon's dragons successfully wipe out his entire army. When he learns Rain is with Tigre, he correctly guesses they're headed to the cave shrine and vows to behead the prince on sight. In Zet, the king summons Sophie and makes her an emissary to Brune's capital. He instructs her to inform Elen that she should prepare to withdraw from the long battle when needed. On her way out, Sophie encounters a war maiden named Valentina, who seems suspicious. Rain is disheartened to find that Ganon has set Arium on fire, but Tigre reassures her that their plans remain unchanged. On their journey, they face off against Ganon's army on the Villacres Plains. Tigre's army of 20,000 clashes with Ganon's 24,000 troops. While the central columns are engaged in battle, Elen and Mila push forward on the right flank. Their goal is to break through Ganon's left flank to access the dragons. Facing the dragons, both women use their magic, and Mila's ice barrage manages to take down 3 of them. However, Elen and Mila struggle to make a dent in the double-headed and fire-breathing dragons. The special metal chains on these dragons block their magical attacks, making them nearly impervious. During the fight, one of the dragons nearly incinerates Mila. Shocked by her attacks being repelled, she freezes, and Elen has to push her out of the way, getting some burns from the flames in the process. As their nader watches from a distance, he realizes the War Maidens are extremely powerful. He orders his soldiers to surround and overwhelm them, even if it costs him a quarter of his troops. With no clear victor, both armies retreat to regroup. Elen and Mila deduce that the dragon's chains might be similar to Roland's sword in how they repel magical attacks. Despite this, they believe they can still defeat the dragons. They assure Tigre they'll handle the dragons while he focuses on the Nader's army. The battle resumes 4 hours later, with the Nader placing the dragons at the front lines. Tigre commands his soldiers to retreat to avoid becoming dragon fodder, giving Elen and Mila the chance to tackle the dragons. Tigre's army is only pretending to flee to gather more weapons. Once armed, they attack the enemy's flanks with everything they have, including stones, boosting their confidence and chanting Silver Ash as they charge. Meanwhile, Elen and Mila take on the dragons. Instead of using their magic directly on the dragons, they use it to maneuver around and land direct hits. The fire-breathing dragon falls easily, but the double-headed dragon, with its tough skin, proves more difficult. It flings Elen to the ground when she tries to strike it. Elen and Mila create a diversion with ice shards while Elen uses her wind powers to accelerate and strike the dragon's back, piercing its skin and landing a fatal blow. With the dragons defeated, the battle is as good as won, and they leave the remaining fight to Tigre. After the battle, the ladies go to find Tigre but find him fast asleep on the ground, utterly exhausted. Elen jokingly suggests waking him with a sword in his mouth, but Titter refuses, concerned he might have trouble eating afterwards. Remembering Tigre's claim about waking up instantly if he senses an animal, Elen decides to test it. She climbs on top of him and uses a technique called bloodlust to mimic animal sounds. Tigre bolts awake and nearly punches her, but once he realizes it's just Elen, he apologizes. Later, Tigre and his party enjoy a feast prepared by Titta, who serves a variety of dishes. Tigre explains that they need to head to Arium, but they won't enter the city. Instead, they plan to access it from beneath the walls to verify Rain's lineage. They hope proving her royal bloodline will win over Brune's civilians and expose Duke Darnard and Ganon's wrongdoing. Rain reveals that the shrine, known as the Holy Grotto, is where the founder of Brune received divine knowledge to establish the kingdom. It has 3 entrances, one in Arium's central district, one in the temple of the goddess Emja southeast of Arium, and one in the public cemetery northeast of Arium. The temple of Emja is the closest. Tigre decides to go with Rain to the temple, but his old attendant Bertrand insists on accompanying them, feeling it might be his last chance to serve Tigre. Tigre agrees on the condition that Bertrand leaves if things get dangerous. Seeing this, Elen volunteers to join despite Lim and Mila's warnings about maintaining her dignity as a war maiden. She orders Lim to gather a team of 5 strong escorts. Tigre accepts her help with the condition that she stays safe and protects the princess. The next morning, Tigre, Rain, Elen, and some guards arrive at the temple, which is a small, rundown building. Inside, Rain opens a heavy door with the guards' assistance, revealing an underground tunnel with a staircase leading to the grotto. Tigre notes the tunnel's chill and suspects it might have been an escape route. Rain explains it was once a stronghold for local ruling families. As they proceed, they see dragon illustrations on the walls. Rain explains that in ancient times, dragons were thought to be the only beings capable of harming a god. Elen disagrees, citing the founder of Zhcted as a dragon incarnation. Rain adds that gods sometimes negotiated with dragons rather than fought them, and that the 3 pillar goddesses were created to serve the dragons. Their discussion ends as they reach the Holy Grotto, only to find Duke Darnard already waiting for them. He calls Rain by her real name and reveals that he knows her secret and intends to kill her. He then draws his sword, aiming to attack. Bertrand quickly pulls Rain to safety as chaos erupts. The guards clash on one side, while Nader instructs his second-in-command to chase after the princess. Elen directs Rurik to handle the guards, then leaps to higher ground to confront Nader. Their swords clash until Nader, wielding a heavy double-headed sword, overpowers her and throws her to the ground. Meanwhile, Rurik and Tigre are engaged in fierce combat with the guards. Suddenly, Zcted, clad in heavy armor, arrives and charges at Tigre. Zcted's attacks fail to land a solid hit, and even when Tigre shoots an arrow at him, Zcted deflects it effortlessly. Zcted admires Tigre's marksmanship, acknowledging the difficulty of hitting him under the circumstances. Zcted then tells the guards to clear the area, stating his sole intention is to eliminate Tigre and Princess Rain. Back in the fight, Nader is impressed by Elen's fighting prowess despite her youth. Elen retorts with a taunt, suggesting Nader should be embarrassed for challenging someone like her. Their duel appears to be at a standstill until the cavern starts collapsing. Nader orders a retreat, but Zcted continues to advance undeterred. Tigre orders Rurik to protect Bertrand and Rain, then dashes away. With the cave shaking, Tigre struggles to target Zcted, who attacks relentlessly, causing Tigre to fall. Elen attempts to return to help but is blocked by debris. Tigre would have been finished if not for Bertrand's heroic sacrifice. Zcted is buried under falling rubble, and Tigre loses consciousness. When Tigre comes to, he finds Zcted dead. In a moment of respect, Tigre covers Stayed's face. He then searches for Bertrand and discovers him gravely injured and losing blood. Bertrand, relieved that Tigre is unharmed, thanks him for his bravery and leadership. He recalls their shared past and admits he had doubts about Tigre's ability to lead Alsace at such a young age. Bertrand is content to leave Alsace in Tigre's care and urges him to look after Titta. With Tigre holding his hand, Bertrand peacefully passes away. Elen and her team rush towards the Holy Grotto after seeing a massive explosion from a distance. When they arrive, they find Tigre lying on the ground, battered and weak. Elen hurries to his side, scolding him for causing her such distress. Her grief deepens when she discovers Bertrand's lifeless body. She quickly requests ropes to help them escape. In the aftermath, the group reflects on Bertrand's many sacrifices for Tigre, who had come to see Bertrand as a father figure. Bertrand had put his life on the line repeatedly, culminating in his final act of heroism. Tigre, devastated by his mentor's death, recalls how he had used his bow's full power to blast through the cave's ceiling in a desperate attempt to escape, realizing he had finally mastered his weapon. However, this achievement is overshadowed by his sorrow over Bertrand's loss. At camp, Titta watches Tigre's mourning with a heavy heart. Elen enters Tigre's tent to talk, offering him some practical options for moving forward. Despite his emotional state, she encourages him not to rush into any decisions. She proposes that Tigre might consider negotiating with their enemies. Tigre is skeptical, but Elen reassures him, sharing her own story of being a former mercenary who had to rely on her pride and self-belief after many losses. Her words give Tigre a renewed sense of purpose. Tigre comforts Titta, apologizing for the stress he has caused and promising to return to Alsace after the war to honor Bertrand properly. Titta finds solace in Tigre's promises. Elen then reveals her strategic vision beyond their current struggles. She wants to establish a trade route connecting Alsace with her kingdom, the Emirates, through the Vosges Mountains. This route would provide Alsace with an economic lifeline and strengthen ties between their lands. Elen is confident that Tigre's leadership will be crucial in making this plan a reality and ensuring peace between the regions. The next day, Prime Minister Badwin arrives with news the king has recovered from his illness and Duke Thenardier has been exposed for poisoning him. Badwin seeks clarification from Tigre on his plans for Brune after the conflict. Tigre explains that his main objective is to ensure Alsace's security before he returns to his role as a Zin prisoner. If Alsace can't be guaranteed safety within Brune, he might consider merging it with Zhcted. Badwin, convinced by Tigre's response, allows them to head to the capital, noting that the king's condition is worsening and he may not survive for long. As they make their way to the capital, Duke Thenardier ambushes them in the wildlands of Merville. His army is disorganized and clumsy without Stayed's leadership, and their Nader's absence leaves them directionless. During the battle, Rain confides in Masha her concerns about assuming the role of Supreme Commander with Tigre's proven leadership. Masha reassures her that this battle is crucial for her legitimacy as the ruler of the capital. Tigre confronts Thenardier, demanding to know his motivations for attacking Alsace. Thenardier admits his actions were driven by personal grudges against Zet, aiming to prevent their interference in Brune's affairs. He confesses he wanted to destroy the land but failed. In his rage, Tigre tries to use his bow's ultimate powers to kill Thenardier, but Elen stops him, advising him to overcome his anger and rely on his skills rather than magical abilities. Heeding her advice, Tigre calms down and prepares just one arrow, discarding the rest. Thenardier, surprised by Tigre's approach, wonders how he intends to succeed with a single shot. As Thenardier charges, Tigre invokes the goddess of wind and storms, and with a single arrow, he strikes Thenardier in the forehead, killing him instantly. The maidens are impressed by Tigre's prowess, noting he relied solely on his skill rather than borrowed magic. After their victory, Tigre, Princess Rain, Elen, Mela, and the Silver Meteor Storm troops receive a grand reception in the capital. Tigre feels uneasy in formal attire next to Rain, while Tita, sitting across from them, shows her jealousy. When they meet the king, they also find Sophie present. The king apologizes to Rain for his previous failures and thanks Tigre for his sacrifices, offering him any reward he wishes. Tigre requests the port city of Agnes, which Muan had sought, and the king grants it along with other rewards, officially naming Rain the rightful heir to the throne. He also bestows upon Tigre the title of Knight of the Moonlight, surprising Badwin, as this title often precedes future kings. The king dies peacefully shortly after. Following his death, Elen and Tigre embark on a mission to create a trade route between Alsace and the Emirates, aiming to boost prosperity and secure Alsace's future. So, guys, that's it for today's video. Watch the following video and I will see you in the next one.